Great. Onegaishimasu. Okay, great. Chat yourself a little bit. Okay, great. Going a little bit front and back. Turn to the side. Rotation. Open, closing. Great, reach out to the top, and then from the knees, all the way down. Nice and slow. And back up through the spine. One more. One. Great. Okay, reach into the sides. Other side. Yeah, and again. One more. A little bit wider with the feet, rolling in circles, nice and easy, not too ill. Great change in direction. Oh, great, coming up to the top, taking one leg back. Bounce through the back leg. Changing the leg. Great, taking one leg over. Great, drop into the center. Bring the toes up. Back to the center, to the other side. Great. Keep bringing both legs back. Bring the hands onto the same line. Release the head towards the ground. And walking out with the hands, just until you're in the fingertips. Pull the hips back a little bit, press in with the fingertips. Stretch all the way down that back line. Placing one hand just underneath the shoulder and then reaching up to the top. Great, changing over. One more each side. Walking the feet back to the hands, pull back together. Fold the body forward. You can press in the palms into the ground. Just release the knees as much as you need. Relax the head. Coming back onto the ankles. And slowly draw it back up to the top. Great. Get to the shoulder, roll in, nice big circles. Rolling forwards. Great. Alternating them out. Think about kind of pulling the shoulders apart. Ways. Across the sides. Stretching one side across. Change the arm. Over the top by the tricep. Then change it over. Stretching the arm out to the side and stretch the neck away from it. Push a little bit through the heel of the hand. Yeah, changing the side. Okay, taking the arm to the back. Drawing it across to the bucket. A little bit away from the body. Change the arm. Great, linking the finger at the back, stretching up to the shoulders. Just rolling them up a little bit. Wrapping them over the front. Looking palm to palm if you can. You can't go to the back of that. Dropping the shoulders down, reaching the hands up. Great. Release it down, bring the elbows to the chest. Bring the arms to the front. Tangle yourself, chin to the side. Drop the shoulders, reach the hand up. Put the elbows down to the chest and then reach up. Shake the wrist out a little bit. And down. The sides. Great. Take it over to a Nikyo. Apply it a few times and then hold it in place. Chin over. Straight over into a kotegashi. Good. Changing side. Form over the top. Changing side. Taking the fingers over for a sanction. Great, taking the fingers, stretching all the way down. Changing over. Great, that's what wrapping up over for Shikane. First one, just stretch the arm out so you've got the kind of joint stretched out. And then think about coiling the body towards the stretching out the body that way. Great, untangle it and scoot sides. Just a little bit out and into it. Great, shake out the hands and arms. Great, rolling the arms down. Legs. Good, shaking the whole body. Let's make it smaller and smaller. It's in the center of the body. Great. Okie dokie. Great, we'll go into Boka. Yep. Okay, perfect. Let's go straight away to the first of So just take the time to stretch it to the back, dropping in the hips.
Okay, just focus on one aspect here, which is the kind of raise from it. So give yourself really space here to really land the cut, and then really feel the transition from the feet and let it kind of pulse into the hand. So just feel that moment rather than feel it, it's more of a release to the upper body than I'm kind of raising you're raising the sword or lifting the sword to the top. So really feel that connection strongly into the ground, and then think about releasing the grip of it. So just play with here. You don't have to kind of raise the sword far or too high, but think about just that sense of releasing the lower structure, and especially shifting the weight back. So you don't want to do too much like pushing off with the front leg. Think much more about kind of sinking into the back. So if you think about that kind of motion, if you to really exaggerate it, then the arms kind of pulling towards the body. But think of this rather than a kind of push out, but it's a bit more of a kind of drawing to the structure. So the kind of body's kind of drawing in, a little bit like a pull, but pulls the kind of wrong, not quite the right way. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Nice. And keep doing this. Just listen to what's happening in the head as well. So notice what's happening especially in the chin, this kind of area. So just notice if you get any kind of movement happening here, which is something like that, or the opposite like that, something happening here. So just notice that and think about the back of the neck staying long all the time. So a little bit of kind of pressure, as if you're just gently kind of pressing the head back with the aim to lengthen it. So not to kind of push it back so that it's tight, but to lengthen it through the spine. So imagine that line through the neck is basically going to connect into that position now. So bring the sword all the way up to the top now. You do it back to the spine, but feel that length all the way. And then use the sword's right in the spine. Use that sense of lengthening against the sword right up to the top, and then drop it in. So just looking to kind of maintain that length through the crown of the head all the time through the exercise. So that's it. But especially notice when you kind of raise the sword. There's 2 points of stress in the body, raising it and cutting. You want the head to just lengthen all the time. So that's it. Nice. Okay, great. We'll just take this into a ski. So going with the kind of basic of number 6, you go down into the cut and then think about pressing out into the thrust this way. Just working one side first. So you find the right side, let's cut, and then press into it with the ski this way. 1, 2, 3. The whole body moving forward as well. 1, 2. nice. Great. And again, just think about this a little bit like a release. So you've got that position, the transition into the thrust. See this as the center releasing into the sword. So as if your center's pressing into the handle between the hands, and then pressing out of it this way. So think of constantly pressing out. What you don't want to do is so much kind of push the arms out with it. So which basically ends up with the connection splits away from it. So think of the connection softening in and then pressing out when you're kind of strong in the connection to the sword. So you press in to it as you extend out with the arms. So that goes to that. But especially on the front of the body to kind of soften in that first movement into the thrust. So, yeah, that's it. Just take this now into a Zengo. So you're going to bring in the left side as well. So cut down on the right, thrust in, rotate to the back, left side, same thing, thrusting on the left. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, keep this nice and slow, but feel now you're going to bring the movements together. So you want to drop into the cut, drop into the thrust. So feel that it's kind of like a slow pulse out of the body. So you've got 1, 2. So keeping the pressure in the back foot as you cut down and then press out of that thrust. So use that build up of pressure from the cut and release it. Find the steep, release it into the thrust. Release it to the thrust. Release it. Release it. Yeah, that's it. So just play with this. This is really about the connection with the arms to the center. So this is just a really simple exercise, kind of stupid, but you just play with the sword basically here. So you're playing with the sword. You're basically doing this movement, this and this, this and this, this and this, this and this. So really simple, but try and get the sense that the sword's quite close to the body in this case. You're just getting the feel for the center basically doing this. So you've got to kind of down, out, down, out, down, out, down, out. The key with this is try and feel, especially the down, the out is an outwards extension. And just want as if the end of the bottom's kind of running onto the end of the table. Don't worry so much about the sword, but much more about the center. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Now play with basic disconnection. If you put the arms out too far, this will basically split. So as the arms extend out, and basically the center's gonna, one thing will happen, the center will start to pull back. So it'll kind of pull back because the arms, as they disconnect, the center wants to try and pull the sword back into the body. So just play with being disconnected. So you know what that feels like, and feel the key thing to know what happens in the body, especially the hips, and you'll probably feel the legs start to tighten as well. So that leads to that. That. So if I'm extended away, and especially if you do this with a heavy body, this is going to be totally exaggerated, but just be a little bit disconnected from the weapon, just so you can feel what happened, what's the feeling in the hips and the legs. So I'm a little bit extended away or stretched out. Yeah. Okay, great. And now try and find a middle place. So the first one's kind of close to the body, the elbows kind of stick in. The second one is the elbows are really away from the body. So play with now this distance between the armpit or the ribs and the elbows, just kind of breathing with it. So you're looking for just the right amount of extension, both in the cut and in the thrust. But the extension in the arms is just slightly different, just slightly different. So it's not a massive amount, and I'm kind of pushing this connection out. You want to feel that kind of connection, but it should be kind of breathing, that kind of movement, and especially go into a kind of fluid movement. That's it. That's it. And once you've got it, just play with both sides as well. So it's slightly different on the left side. And again, if you go to disconnected movements, it's much easier to disconnect on the left side. It's very easy for the sword to be too far away from the body to kind of control it. So the hips will start to react. So the left side is generally usually closer to the body than the cut. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Nice. Okay. So now just gently start to increase the focus into the cut, so you can raise the sword a little bit higher, but feel that you're bringing in the cut, bringing in the focus, and then try and get that feeling into the sword. You want to also find that kind of vibration back through the strike. You want to find it in the thrust as well. So that movement should translate into the tip. But yeah, it's going to kind of be controlled by the center, but it really matters the distance of the arms, because if you're kind of too far out, the center just gets pulled out. Start to reject it. That's it. That's it. And again, again, just play with the left side as well, changing every so often. Good, and then just come back to the full cut with it. So working with a Zengo, that to that, and you want it a little bit tighter, that to that. So now you want to focus into the snap of the ski. You really play with the arms so you feel like, that's too far out. Oh, that's too close. Just want the right amount of extension in both of the movements. The extension's just a little bit different, subtly, a little bit further away with the ski. Okay, now just notice one thing in the sword. So notice there's two things that can happen. One is if the cut's not grounded, or if the cut's bouncing up in that way, then the ski will lift up. So it will do that kind of motion. And again, it will kind of transfer into the neck unless I go into tension. The other one in this is if the cut's not grounded this way. So I kind of dribble down into it, and then the sword goes down into that position. So I end up with a movement that's like that in the movement. So play with the idea that the key is that the hips are going to find the ground. So really find the hip in the ground. That. So that the sword's basically, that motion is caught, the sword's caught in the hip, and then the hip, you want to just twist them in this way. But I don't want the movement of the hip to be ungrounded at that point. So play with the idea. This is only a slightly easier one because the front leg's fully grounding in. That. You've got the back leg in the ground already. That, really feel that, and then that. Rather than something or that. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Good. So the more that the cut's kind of grounded initially, the more when you release it, you can press it straight into that first thing. Yeah, that's it. Good. Great, we'll take it into number 7. So just the first few, get nice and basic, find the ground with the cut, let it settle, and then roll the hip in. And you really see that as kind of release through the structure. But the key thing that now is that spiral into the front leg. If you find the first, just work your right side, left side first. Find the ground and then raise into the first. So just try this, take the right hand, you're going to place it on the hips just to really feel what's happening in the hips. So you do the same motion, drop in with it, and then think about pressing through. So the first you just get a sense for what's happening in the hip in that movement. So you drop the hip in, and then you step into it. Drop the hip in, step into it. Give a little bit of pause between the movements as well, but drop in, and release it to the step. Just really feel what's happening in the hip as you do it. So. So just watch for one thing, especially in this one, you don't want to twist the hip out to the back and then twist it into the cut this way. So let that front hip, imagine the hip bone, that part of it really goes forward into the movement. So that as if it's kind of spreading to the front, and then keep that direction with the next movement, that. So the hip basically needs to now fold to allow for the step. So just feel that moment now. But just watch, I can basically cheat that by doing that and then pulling the hip out. So like that. But in a way, it's really, in a way, quite unbalanced because my movement forward in the hip is going out this way. And then I get kind of, the body's going into tension to pull itself together. So think about the hip going forward, folding, and then adjusting. Forward, folding to the step. So. Yes, yeah, exactly. That's it. Good. And then just think now, if you think of this spiral movement in the hip, it's really important that the legs also pass in that spiral down. So what can happen is, again, I can use a spiral movement here, but it can basically pass out into the leg where it starts to go out this way. So it starts to lose the knee. And this is where you get this problem of like trying to open the foot out, because then the knee's basically coming out of structure. So to stop that happening, I start to do that. It's going to have to let it pass through. But feel with this as you do it, just play with this position. And you want basically that whole joint from the hip to the knee to the foot to pass a spiral down, but it's not going to come out of structure this way. In which case I need to open the foot to allow the knee to travel with the toe. Otherwise, I'm really asking for trouble here. So just feel that you're here. And then you can basically just coil the hip into it. So you drop into the hip, but it stays open to allow that spiral through. But think about the hips basically coiling underneath that way without that happening. I basically lose the structure. So think of that spiral that's going through the upper body and the arms is going to also go down to the feet. And need that leg to be. I need to be basically falling into the leg and not with the structure coming out of it. That's it. Okay, perfect. Take it back into the sword now. So feel especially now that connection from the hip to the hand. So this movement, try and connect that now into the to the base of the sword. That to that. And again, just watch that the hips don't get pulled out with it. So that can tend to happen, and then I get pushed into it. I end up kind of splitting the movement. But think about that dropping in and then that spiral pressing through. Yeah. Good. So the same thing can also happen with the hands. I can kind of fake the spiral by doing something like that. So the sword basically starts to come off the body and it goes around this way. So think of that spiral, like from this position, just that kind of motion. But so it's mainly that connection elbow forearm. That's doing that rather than going around. So really think about that position. You're releasing it, but it's not pulling away from the body. That to that. You basically want it to transfer from the center line, or right into the center of the body. To that point, going towards the hip, but not off the body, where I'm kind of twisting into it. So think of the connection now. Think of the center being mobile. You're just going to press the center line, pass into that hip, that, and then you press it through with it, but you still want to be locked onto the body. Yes. Yeah. Get a really simple exercise just for kind of splitting, or the feeling of what it's like to split. So just do this with a push. We're doing this yesterday in the evening a little bit, but play with a push out so that you're kind of extended away, not locked out, but just with a sense that you're kind of holding something here. Now, feel the difference between the hand being in the center of the body or being behind the center behind it, that pushing in, and the difference between that locked out. So even a little bit away from the body, like push in, it's going to start to go leak into the shoulder. If you make it extreme and you kind of push it out here, and you try and put the thing with it, this is really going to go not so great. So if you imagine like a one hand push into something, just feel the difference, and like millimeters really make a difference between that and that really being centered with it. And the key with this as you transition it is feel that you've got that position. As you change over, the hand's going to lock into the hip, that, and then as you push into it, the hand can follow through that way. But just play that so you don't need to do any kind of spiral work, just basically a locked out joint. And if you've got a wall near or you've got something you can push into, that's also useful. It makes a really big difference if you feel the structure behind it. That's it. And then just play with it a little bit more in a kind of fluid way. So you're going to kind of drop in. You can do really anything with handles. So this kind of tiny ankle position is a nice position. In terms of like Shonuchi work, you can kind of come into more of a Yokoin position. Just play with now that, and then the sense again, you can coil in, spiral out with the hand. So a little bit more of a sense of spiraling, but it's a bit more of a cockpit feel. So you can go from that position to that, which will really emphasize the spiral, the hand down, and then rolling into it. But again, look at that connection with the elbow and the torso. Yeah. Again, trying to keep the center behind it all the time. And again, just notice the difference between if I'm out there and I'm out there. So there's a lot of pressure going to the body. Please. That's it, that's it. Okay, perfect. Great, come back into the sword. And again, just work now with a more of a dynamic movement. So you want to bring that together now. So that. But really, again, getting the hip in behind the movement is super important now for the guy. If it's out, it's going to pull the whole structure out. So get the feeling the hips really coiling behind the weapon. Coiling behind it. If you can start to get the feeling that you're really going from the impulse in the cut into that movement. So you impulse, drop it in. Impulse, drop it in. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Perfect. Ooh, bless you. Okay, so just watch the timing now. Watch for this happening. So if you find the focus, and I get the I release at the wrong time. So basically, it's like that's still on, and then I try and get again. The hand's going to kind of pull out, so I end up with a movement like that. The center gets pulled away because the hands are in tension, and then they pull out. So try and time now that release in the hands. So just play with this movement again. Super simple exercise. Play with snapping on and off the hands. But I should feel that the hands can go free, but they need to go free before the hip movement. If they free after it, then they pull me out. Unless I hold the body in tension, but that's another story. Try and kind of feeling. And it's just that sense of kind of walking forward. But I don't want to feel that the hands are pulling the structure out. So they need to gently release from it. So you got the snap, release. Yeah, that's it. Good. That's nice. And now put all your focus in the center of the body. So we were talking about this yesterday also, this idea that the center never really goes inactive. So it's always kind of pressing in. So think now, what I don't want is the release in the hand kind of releases the center. So I end up with something like the center kind of doesn't really know where to go. So keep that kind of tension in the body here. So but feel that the whole center, not just the front, the whole back of the body, that kind of feeling. And that pressure is basically constant through it. But you're allowing the arms to soften through it and then snap on. But feel that the movement's really a snap out from the center. So the center's doing all the heavy work. Yes. Okay, great. Last few minutes, just bring these movements together. So we'll bring 6 in, both sides, and then go into 7. So the set goes like this. You draw into number 6 on the right, go into 𝒂𝒂𝒿 on the left, and then change it right side to the first. And then when you get to the end of 7, you can rotate anywhere you like, but I prefer to kind of slide through to the back, and then you go into a 𝒂𝒂𝒿, and just keep repeating it. You go into 6 on the right, 𝒂𝒂𝒿, 6 on the left, change, number 7, and then slice to the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. Drop into the back. Okay, perfect. So rather than like 6, 7 movements, see this is now 3. So you want to feel now that the strike and the thrust go together, strike together, and then you're resetting, start it again. So you want to have 1, 2, 3. Change. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Okay, last minute, really drop the power in the focus and just go to really the feeling in the legs, what's happening in the legs, lower body. So just play with this now. You go like this exercise. It's slower, but feel the pressure in the feet. You do it. And you can also, once you've got this, start to take it into a little bit more flexibility with it, but really de-emphasize the cut or de-emphasize the focus in the cut. The movement's the same. But really think about placing the feet consciously. Set. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2. Good. Okay, last 30 seconds. Just play with free cutting. So any direction, any thrust, but just play with the center space of the active all the time. So you can also include backwards movements with this. But feel again, not really emphasizing the focus in the cuts or the thrust, but keeping the center base of the emotion, keeping it really solid in the movements. Just pretty move. Anyway, kind of mix it in 6 and 7. Really focus on that connection with the sword. Okay, perfect. Very good. Great. Domo arigato.
Domo arigato. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks a lot.